If you walked through the town of Okpuno-Ibe, there was one mama put that everybody talked about. Mama Ademo's Delight Kitchen. Her food was the sweetest in town. They said no one cooked like her. And her restaurant? Always clean. Not just that. Mama Ademo always had that soft voice and a gentle smile. But everyone who ate from her had no idea who or what she truly was. Strange things began to happen. People didn't know why some customers felt dizzy after eating her food, why her food sometimes carried a faint smell of decay, why her favorite customers always disappeared without warning, or why her fridge was locked with two heavy padlocks that no one was ever allowed to touch. Until one evening, a customer saw something that froze his entire soul. At that moment, they discovered the shocking truth. The very woman who fed the entire town, the woman everyone trusted, wasn't human at all. She was a ghost cook, feeding the community with food no living person was ever meant to taste. Stay with me till the end of this story, because after watching this video, you will never eat in any random restaurant or mama put again. Okpuno-Ibe was a small town where everyone knew everyone. The streets were calm, the evenings peaceful, and the mornings filled with the smell of frying akara, roasting corn, and fresh pap. But among all the food sellers scattered across the town, one woman stood out, Mama Ademo. She didn't look dangerous. In fact, she was the last person anyone would suspect of anything strange. She was a calm widow, soft-spoken, always smiling. Her smile was the kind that made you relax immediately, as though she carried peace in her palms and blessed anyone who walked close to her. Her mama put, Mama Ademo's Delight Kitchen, sat right beside the old junction, an open spot where the wind always carried the sweet aroma of her food across the road. People used to joke that even the air around her was delicious. Children loved her. Mothers trusted her. Men stopped by every evening to eat before going home. And somehow, everyone who tasted her pepper soup would always say the same thing. Ah, Mama Ademo's hand is sweet. Her food isn't just ordinary. The pepper soup always hit the soul, as if it understood the person eating it. Her meat, very soft, very tender, very tasty, was unlike any other. Some people said no one in all of Okpuno-Ibe could cook like her, and she never shouted, never argued, never complained. If she wanted to ask a customer something, she would speak in her gentle voice. "My child, sit down. Food is almost ready." "Don't worry, it will be very sweet." Her eyes always looked warm. Her voice always looked harmless. To the people of Okpuno-Ibe, Mama Ademo was a blessing, someone sent by God to feed the town. Even mothers who were overly careful with their children would say, "Go to Mama Ademo. She is safe." Nobody knew that sentence would one day become the regret of the entire community. Because what they called sweetness was death wearing a smile. What they called innocence was evil wrapped in a wrapper and tied with a head tie. Mama Ademo's kindness was a mask, and behind that mask lived something no one in Okpuno-Ibe had ever imagined, because nothing about her was ordinary. Her food, her smile, her kitchen, her silence, everything hid a secret Okpuno-Ibe was not ready for. At first, nobody noticed anything. Life carried on normally. People came, ate, paid, and went home. But slowly, quietly. Something strange began happening in Okpuno-Ibe. People started disappearing. Not just anybody. They were Mama Ademo's favorite customers. Young men and women who always praised her food. People she would smile at a little longer. People she would sometimes call inside her kitchen to help her bring water. These were the ones who vanished. The first disappearance didn't shake the town too much. A young man named Nima, one of her regular customers, didn't come home one night. People said maybe he traveled. Maybe he went to Onitsha for work. Maybe he ran off without telling anyone. His family searched for him for days. No sign, no clue, nothing. They cried, prayed, and finally accepted that he may have been kidnapped by ritualists. 2 weeks later, another customer disappeared. A young lady named Kosi, also one of Mama Ademo's regulars. This time, the whispers grew louder. What's happening in this town? Two people just disappeared like that? Maybe it's the same kidnappers. Weeks later, another one vanished. Then another, and another. Okpuno Ibe began to panic. Some people blamed traveling, some blamed insecurity, some blamed the times. But nobody, absolutely nobody, suspected Mama Ademo. How could they? She was the quiet widow who minded her business. She was the gentle cook who fed everyone. She was the smiling woman who used to say, "Eat well, my children. God bless you." And instead of suspicion, people pitied her. Chai, this woman is just alone. God will bless her. Even when people felt dizzy after eating her food, they still blamed the weather, stress, or hunger. No one connected the dizziness to the delicious meals. Even when customers reported strange stomach rumbling after eating from her, they drank water and moved on. Nobody connected it with missing persons. In fact, there was a rumor that her food tasted even better each time someone went missing. Some people said, "This woman's food gets sweeter every week." But nobody dared question why. They loved her food too much. They trusted her too much. They were too blinded by her calmness to see the danger standing in front of them. But that wasn't all. If Okpuno Abe was known for anything, it was how open and free people were. In that town, kitchens were like hearts, always open, always warm, always welcoming. Women cooked outside, neighbors borrowed pepper from one another, and even strangers could walk into any compound and be offered a piece of yam. But Mama Ademo was different. Her kitchen was the only place in the entire community that no one had ever entered. Not even by accident. Not even out of curiosity. She cooked alone. She cleaned alone. She washed her pots alone. And she never, not even once, allowed anyone inside her cooking area. At first, people didn't see it as strange. Many thought she was simply a private woman who enjoyed her space. Others said she was a perfectionist who didn't want anyone tampering with her cooking process. But after months passed, people began to notice small things, little things, funny things, things that didn't add up, like how she never bought meat, ever. Not beef, not chicken, not goat meat, not fish. When other sellers queued at the meat section of Okpuno Ibe Market, arguing over prices and freshness, Mama Ademo walked straight past them as if the meat section didn't exist. Yet every day, she cooked meals swimming with meat. Soft, tender meat that melted in the mouth, meat that customers swore tasted better than goat meat, meat that tasted richer than cowhead. Some people asked her playfully, "Mama, are you a magician? Where does your meat come from?" She simply smiled gentle and replied softly, "I have my supplier." And because she was Mama Ademo, the sweet widow with the gentle voice, nobody questioned her further. But inside their minds, people wondered. What kind of supplier refuses to be known? What kind of meat doesn't come from the market? And why was her kitchen always locked? Because yes, her kitchen was always locked, not just with an ordinary lock. Her fridge, that fridge that nobody had ever seen open, had 2 padlocks. Thick, heavy padlocks, the kind used to secure storerooms or farm stores. One day, a teenage girl who came to buy food noticed the padlocks and asked innocently, "Mama, why are you locking the fridge with 2 padlocks?" Mama Ademo smiled calmly and replied, "My child, this fridge spoils food if I don't lock it well. But which fridge spoils food if it's unlocked?" That was the first time some customers felt something cold in their chest. Another day, a neighbor passing behind her shop saw her lift something heavy into the kitchen. A shape wrapped in black nylon, long and stiff like a log. He thought maybe she had bought tubers of yam or a bag of plantain. But the shape was too smooth, too stiff, and too heavy. He summoned courage, walked up to her and asked, "Mama, what's inside that nylon?" She responded with a smile, "Just vegetables, my son." yet the nylon didn't bend like vegetables. The neighbor stood there wondering, lost in the thought that something wasn't right. And sometimes other neighbors swore they heard sounds from her kitchen at night, not the sound of pots or kettles, but strange thuds, like something being dragged or lifted or shoved. But in Okpuno Ibe, people minded their business. Besides, food can hypnotize the mind. And as long as Mama Ademo's food tasted sweet, the people convinced themselves there was nothing wrong. They didn't know the truth. They didn't know the darkness behind those padlocks. They didn't know that every ingredient she used had a story. And the story was soaked in evil, blood, and fear. They didn't know that the foods and soft meat they enjoyed with smiles was not meat at all. They were humans, and she had a horrible pattern on how she chose her victims and what she did with them. She didn't capture everyone. She didn't kill randomly. She was patient, selective, and strategic. She chose only her favorite customers, the ones who praised her food too much, the ones who ate from her almost daily, the ones who came alone. She knew their names, knew their walking patterns, knew when they were most vulnerable. And she used her food as the bait, her pepper soup, her jollof rice, her stew, her tender meat. All of them contained something unseen, a charm, a pull, a spiritual hook that tied her victims to her. It started with cravings. The moment she identified a target, she would prepare something specially for the person. The victim would taste a particular meal, smile, swallow, and walk away thinking nothing of it. But the next day, they would feel a strange hunger. Not normal hunger, a deep, almost painful craving for Mama Ademo's food. They would tell themselves, "Let me just go and eat small." Then the craving grew worse. Some would eat at her shop 2 times a day, some 3 times, some even 4 times. They didn't know they were walking straight into her net. And Mama Ademo watched quietly, smiling softly as she served them plate after plate, knowing that every spoonful tightened the invisible rope around their soul. Then came the final stage. One evening, after the cravings had fully taken root, she would approach the victim gently. "My child, come and help me carry something a little in the kitchen." She always said it politely. She always said it softly. She always said it with a smile. And because she was trusted, the victim followed. They followed her behind the shop. They followed her into the forbidden kitchen. And the moment they stepped inside, she locked the door. 1 lock, 2 locks. Then, silence. Inside the kitchen, the victims felt something strange. The air was heavy. The walls were darker than normal. The fridge hummed like it was breathing, and the air smelled slightly like decay, mixed with spices. Before the victim could ask a question, Mama Ademo struck, not with a knife, not with a gun, but with an ancient ritual charm older than the town itself. She sprinkled powder on the victim. She whispered words in a forgotten language. She circled them 3 times, then placed her hand on their forehead. Their eyes rolled back, their bodies weakened, and their mind drifted away like smoke. They never saw the final blow. Then she'll do the unimaginable. She will kill them quietly, gently, and calmly. And that was when her real work began. She didn't store the bodies in the fridge to preserve them. No, she stored them to decay. Human bodies begin to rot differently in the presence of certain dark charms. Instead of drying up, they melt, slowly, layer by layer, until the flesh turns into a jelly-like substance. And that was what Mama Ademo scraped off. The soft, decayed skin, the melted flesh, the parts the charm loosened. She collected it in bowls, boiled it, added spices, served it as meat inside pepper soup, and also as meat in the foods she sold to customers. The sweetness people loved. The flavor nobody could resist. The tenderness they praised. Was human flesh softened by death. Every plate consumed tied the customer spiritually to her. Every swallow fed her. Every spoon made her stronger. Her victims' souls strengthened her dark existence. No one knew they were eating the same people who had been missing. No one knew every meal they enjoyed was someone else's final breath. Okpuno Ibe kept eating, and Mama Ademo kept feeding. And as long as the padlocks remained unbroken, her darkness remained hidden, until a young man discovered the dark, unimaginable truth. For a long time, Mama Ademo's customers were mostly people who lived close to her shop. Traders, Okada riders, school children, apprentices, and civil servants. But everything changed the day Kenji walked into her canteen for the first time. Kenji was one of those boys the town loved, hard-working, respectful, soft-spoken, and always smelling of engine oil from working at the mechanic workshop down the street. He was the kind of man who minded his business and didn't look for trouble. One hot afternoon, tired and hungry after fixing a bus engine, he walked into Mama Ademo's shop because a friend told him, "Guy, if you taste Mama Ademo's food once, or even her pepper soup, you'll never want to eat in another place again." Kenji laughed at the exaggeration, but hunger humbled him. The moment he tasted her pepper soup, he paused. Something wasn't normal. The pepper wasn't choking. The meat wasn't chewy. The aroma was not like goat meat, chicken, or cow leg. It was soft, tender, sweet in a way he could not explain. He frowned and whispered to himself, "What kind of meat is this?" But the sweetness covered the doubt. He finished the entire plate, paid her, and left. That night something strange happened. Kenji had a dream, a dark dream he couldn't fully explain. In the dream, he was walking inside a foggy forest. He could hear footsteps behind him, but every time he turned, he saw nothing. Then suddenly, he heard voices whispering his name. "Kenji, Kenji, come." When he woke up, his heart was racing, and sweat covered his entire body. He tried to laugh it off, blaming it on stress, but the next morning, he found himself craving Mama Ademo's pepper soup again. He didn't want bread. He didn't want yam. He didn't want beans or even rice. He wanted only one thing, her pepper soup. That same day, he returned to her shop. This time, when he finished eating, he felt slightly dizzy, like the world was spinning, like he was falling into a trance. Mama Ademo noticed and smiled gently at him. "Don't worry, my son," she said softly. "Looks like you overfed yourself. Just rest a little." Her voice felt like a whisper directly inside his brain. He staggered home and slept again. And that night, another dream followed. In this dream, he saw dark, faceless figures standing around him in a circle. Their voices blended together like 1,000 whispers echoing in unison. "You belong to us now." The faces moved slowly towards him. He became terrified. Again, he woke up shouting and sweating at the same time. Yet, he still wanted the pepper soup again. By the third day, Kenji knew something was wrong. He started observing every detail. Her meat tasted too soft. The aroma was too strange. The dizziness started immediately after eating. The dreams grew worse. He felt like something was following him. But he was a man who didn't jump to conclusions, so he remained calm and watched quietly. One evening, after eating at her shop, he mistakenly left his room key on her table. He returned later that night to collect it, and that was the moment destiny led him into something he was never supposed to see. As he approached the back of the canteen, he noticed the back door, the door nobody ever used, slightly open, just a tiny crack. But a crack was enough to change everything. The air coming from the door smelled faintly of something rotten. Kenji's heart began to thump. He stepped closer, pushed the door just enough to create a gap, and bent his head to peep inside. That very moment, what he saw almost stopped his heart. Inside the kitchen, under dim yellow light, Mama Ademo stood in front of her fridge, the famous fridge with 2 padlocks. But tonight, the padlocks were open, and the fridge door was wide open. A thick, dark, rotten fog poured out of it like smoke from a charcoal pot. Kenji covered his nose, but the smell forced its way into his nostrils. A mix of decay, blood, and something worse. Something spiritual. His eyes adjusted slowly. And then he saw the most horrible thing he'd never seen in his entire life. Inside the fridge were human body parts. Not bones, not dried remains, but fresh enough to identify. A half-decayed arm with rings on the fingers, a shoulder still covered with melting skin. A human torso slumped in a bucket. A face, pale, swollen and rotting, pressed against the fridge wall. Toes and fingers kept in small bowls. Some bodies were melting like candle wax, their flesh slumping into bowls placed beneath them. Kenji covered his mouth to stop himself from screaming. His knees almost gave way. For a few seconds, he could not move. He could not blink. He could barely breathe. Then a cold, chilling realization struck him like lightning. These were the missing people. These were the customers who disappeared. These were the same people he heard about on the news. Before he could recover from the shock, Mama Ademo dipped a metal spoon into a clay bowl filled with gray, jelly-like, half-rotten flesh. The flesh taken from the melting bodies. The same tender meat everyone loved in her pepper soup. The bowl wriggled. It wasn't just rotten flesh. It had worms, white worms twisting and curling through the jelly. And she put the spoon in her mouth and tasted it. She murmured. That was when the impossible happened. Her human disguise flickered like a glitch in a video. Her skin rippled and peeled, her neck stretched, her eyes sank into hollow sockets. Her smile widened unnaturally. She looked less like a woman and more like a creature wearing a human mask, a ghost in human skin, a dead woman pretending to be alive. Kenji couldn't hold it anymore. He let out a loud, terrified scream. Mama Ademo didn't turn with surprise. She didn't jump. She simply lifted her head slowly, and her face peeled again momentarily. She saw him through the cracked door, not physically but spiritually. Her dead eyes glowed faintly, and she smiled. Not a human smile, but a ghost's smile. A smile that said, "Yes, run. I already know who you are." Kenji stumbled back, almost falling. He sprinted out of the compound, panting, shaking, sweating, praying he wouldn't collapse. His legs barely carried him. But before he ran, he did one thing. He grabbed his phone and captured everything. The fridge, the bodies, the worms, the decayed flesh, her true form, everything. He ran with evidence, and that evidence would shake the entire Okpuno Ibe before sunrise. When Kenji finally reached the youth center, he was trembling like a child. Sweat poured down his face. His shirt was sticky. His breathing came in sharp bursts. The boys gathered around him, thinking he had been attacked. "Kenji, what happened?" He tried to speak, but his voice stuttered. Mama Ademo, she is..." They cut him off, his voice loud. "Mama Ademo? What are you trying to say about that innocent woman? Gaia, beg, watch it. Don't insult her. That woman is the one feeding us. Yes, she even gives us food on credit. She doesn't disturb anybody." Kenji shook his head violently and whispered, "She is not human." They laughed until he brought out his phone. "Watch." The first few seconds of the video showed nothing unusual. Then the fridge door appeared, and the bodies, and the melting flesh, and Mama Ademo tasting the rotting meat. That moment, the boys screamed and stumbled backward. One shouted, "Blood of Jesus!" Another dropped to his knees. Another ran outside to throw up. Within minutes, the entire compound echoed with fear. Someone shouted, "We must go there now!" Another said, "Call the elders, call the police, call everybody." People ran from house to house. Women screamed. Men started grabbing sticks, matches, kerosene. Before long, a crowd of almost 50 angry, terrified townspeople marched toward Mama Ademo's canteen. But when they reached the shop, it was dark, silent, and still. The front door was locked, but the back door, the same door Kenji had peeped through, was slightly open, like an invitation. The men forced the rest of it open. They entered. What they saw inside burned a hole in their memories forever. Dozens of body parts, stuffed in the fridge, arranged on the table, hidden behind bags of rice, packed in basins, folded inside sacks, bones scattered behind the stove, bowls of gray jelly, the meat, buckets of melted flesh, a calabash filled with the names of her regular customers, a ritual lamp decorated with human teeth, bloodstains hidden under her floor mat. Women fainted, children screamed, men froze, some ran out crying, some shouted Jesus, some shouted abomination. One woman fainted after seeing her own son's shoe beside the fridge. This was no kitchen. It was a slaughterhouse, a shrine, a feeding ground for a ghost. And Mama Ademo? She was nowhere to be found. Not her shadow, not her breath, not her footsteps. She had vanished. But her horror remained. And that night, the town understood why her food tasted too sweet to be normal. They understood where the missing people went. They understood the cravings. They understood the dizziness. They understood the dreams. They understood the padlocks. They understood the ghost. They understood the danger of eating anywhere carelessly. And Okpuno Ibe never forgot that encounter. Ever. That night, after the horrifying discovery inside Mama Ademo's canteen, the entire town gathered restlessly in front of the shop. People stood in clusters, whispering, shaking their heads, clutching their children, trying to understand how they had lived among such evil, eating from the hands of a creature they never suspected. Some people cried uncontrollably when they recognized the clothes, wristwatches, or shoes belonging to their missing loved ones. Mothers held their chests, screaming the names of children they lost years ago. Fathers knelt helplessly on the ground, calling on God to punish whatever spirit had played a role in their sorrow. Amid this chaos, the elders sent for the one man Okpuno Ibi trusted whenever something crossed from physical to spiritual. Baba Olu, the ancient spiritual elder who had lived long enough to see what humans feared to speak about. When Baba Olu arrived, silence fell like a blanket over the crowd. He was old, very old, his hair white like cotton, his back slightly bent, his walking stick carved with ancient symbols. His eyes, though aged, held the sharpness of someone who had seen the footprints of spirits and knew their gates. The moment he stepped into the canteen, he inhaled deeply, and his face tightened. Ha! He exhaled, his voice heavy. This is not the work of the living. He moved slowly around the kitchen, tapping the floor with his staff. Once, twice, thrice. Then he stopped in front of the fridge and placed his palm on it. His eyes widened. "There is something all of you must hear," he said quietly, turning to the crowd. People leaned forward. Some held their breath. Baba Olu began, "Mama Ademo died 12 years ago." Gasps filled the room. Some people stepped back in fear. Others shook their heads violently. Baba Olu continued. "She was once a woman in a very far community, a cook and a witch. She used food to poison people, both innocent adults and even children. She sold meals that took lives. When the town discovered the truth back then, the people chased and stoned her to death right before her shop. She was buried in her village, far away from the community." A heavy silence fell. Baba Olu walked around the kitchen again, his staff tapping rhythmically like a heartbeat. "But spirits like hers do not rest," he said, "especially when they die with hunger for more souls." He lifted one of the clay bowls filled with rotting flesh and shook his head. "This is not ordinary decay. This is ghost feeding. She feeds on rot, not fresh food. And every time you tasted this, you entered her net." He pointed at the calabash with names. She didn't just sell food, she collected souls. Each name written here became spiritually tied to her. Her charm-based cooking kept you coming back, and every plate you ate gave her more power. Some people burst into tears. One woman fainted and had to be carried out. Baba Olu raised his hand and declared, "This is no longer a matter for human strength. We must send her spirit back to where it belongs." He placed dry leaves, kola nuts, white chalk, and charcoal in a circle on the floor. The crowd stepped back. He began chanting softly in an ancient dialect no one understood. His voice trembled the way the air trembles before rain. The ground under the kitchen began to vibrate lightly. At first, people thought it was their imagination, but then the canteen walls shook. The pots on the shelves rattled, the wooden spoons clattered to the floor. The entire shop hummed with a strange pulse. Suddenly, a dark mist rose from the ground like smoke escaping from hell itself. It took shape in the center of the kitchen. A twisted form, a shadow with no legs, a face with no eyes, a presence that carried the cries of many trapped souls. It screamed, not like a human, not like an animal, but like thousands of voices crying inside one mouth. Women fell to the ground, screaming. Children ran. Men staggered backward. Some clutched their heads. Baba Olu's staff glowed faintly. He struck the ground. The mist twisted violently and shot toward the ceiling, shaking the entire shop. And then it vanished, gone, leaving behind only a deep silence and a cold wind that made everyone shiver. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Then Baba Olu finally said, "It is done." But the fear remained, because even though the spirit had been expelled, the damage she left behind would haunt the town for years. By sunrise, the community made a decision. Mama Ademo's canteen had to be destroyed. People gathered with matches, kerosene, and sticks. The building was set ablaze. Flames rose high into the sky. The bones in the kitchen cracked from the heat. The fridge melted like wax. People cried as they watched the fire swallow the last traces of the ghost cook. Some mourned openly. Families who never found closure finally understood why their children never came home. One man broke down after identifying his missing sister's bracelet in the pile of remains. A woman fainted when she recognized her son's school uniform. A father screamed when he saw his daughter's anklet in the ashes. The pain filled the air. And for the first time in many years, the truth came out. The disappearances, the unexplained sickness, the strange dreams. Everything was tied to the ghost who fed on their town. Kenji, the man who exposed her, survived, but not without scars. For months he had nightmares about her. He saw her standing at his door. He heard her whisper his name. He felt cold hands touching him at night. Even though the exorcism was done, her shadow followed him in dreams. The trauma never truly left. Many customers who ate from her fell mysteriously ill. Some became weak overnight. Some collapsed unexpectedly. The town pastor and elders prayed for days, visiting homes, cleansing families, and treating those affected with traditional herbs and spiritual protection. Some recovered. Many never fully did. Children were warned never to enter any food shop without their parents again. Men stopped eating at random mama puts in the area. Women became cautious about where their husbands bought meals. And Mama Ademo's name? It became a warning, a forbidden story whispered to children and among adults at night. Don't eat everywhere. Remember what happened to Mama Ademo's customers. And everyone in the town of Okpuno Ibe learned, but they never forgot till this day. Lesson from this story. Fam, this story is not just a horror tale. It's a lesson wrapped in fear, reminding us that not everyone who smiles at you is human. Not every clean kitchen cooks with clean hands, and not every delicious food is meant to nourish you. Some are meant to trap you. Evil hides in familiar places, and sometimes the dead walk among the living in forms we trust the most. So be wise. Be careful where you eat. Be careful who feeds you. Be careful what you consume, physically and spiritually. Because a single innocent plate of food can carry 1,000 unseen dangers. Did you enjoy the story? Have you ever eaten somewhere and later felt uneasy? Do you believe spirits or witches can disguise themselves as humans and do the unimaginable? What would you have done if you were Kenji or one of the victim's relatives? Share your thoughts in the comments and tell us your own experience or what you've heard or seen related to this. Don't forget to also like, share, and subscribe to African Tales by Emiday for more shocking, mysterious, and spiritually eye-opening stories with deep lessons. See you in the next one.